I'll never forget the day that one of my kids was misbehaving, and I was getting a little ramped up, and I was ready to put the hammer down on him. And Shelly stopped me, and she said, "You know what? The boys aren't the problem. They're the clue." And I said, "Well, they it sure seems like they're the problem. They won't clean their rooms. They're fighting with each other." She said, "No, I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying." I said, "Well, tell me what you're saying." And she said, "Well, the kids aren't the problem. They're the clue. Think about the information you're receiving from them as this goes along." And I said, "Okay, help me understand." Well, a while back, she had expressed to me that kids are like velociraptors. They're testing the fences, and they will always test the fences and until there's weaknesses. And when they find those weaknesses, they'll exploit them. And she said, "Here's what you have to do, ultimately." She said, "Kids do what works." So they're doing things that work for them. You just have to make them not work in a kind uh, way and show them love. And I said, "Well, right now they're about to get whooped." She said, "Let me share something with you." And I said, "Okay." Well, a few years earlier, she had been asked to speak in church about raising kids. And she had done that. And afterwards, a lady walked up to her and said, "Hey, listen, I have a question for you." And Shelly said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, my kids are whiners. I can't get them to stop. No matter what I do, they keep whining. It's driving us crazy, me and my husband." She said, "Well, kids do what works. So they're whining because they're getting what they want." And she said, "What?" And she said, "When whining stops getting them what they want, they will stop doing it." And I'll never forget, the lady looked at her for a second, and Shelly said, "Here's what you do. You go home, you get all your kids together, and you sit them down, and you say, and make sure your husband's involved, and you say, 'Listen, if you whine, you will never, ever, 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 ever get what you want. I will immediately say no, and you will never get what you want if you whine. You come to me with a different approach, you might get it, but a whine will not get it." And she said her and her husband committed to that. For the next few days, the kid, when they would whine, she'd say, "You're whining and you will not get what you want." And she just put the hammer down on him. And the next Sunday she came back, she was happy to report the whining had stopped. Now they're trying other things, and that's okay. But then at least you know what they're trying next to get what they want. Kids do what works. When it works for them, they continue to do it. Our job is to make it not work and give them a reasonable way to request things that does work. That's the deal, right? So your kids are not the problem, they're the clue. And if we look at it that way, it changes how we deal with our kids. Have a great day.